Our next guest had a chance to ask a few of them. He's the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, and he joins us on the phone. Tom, good to have you with us, sir. Thank you.
Hey, Vince, good to be with you.
Look, I've been one of the people who've wanted better moderators and questioners at these Republican debates, and the RNC apparently heard the call, and putting Tom Fitton in there seems like a very good idea. Were you pleased to be a part of the debate last night?
I was. And, of course, I was, Judicial Watch is the country's largest government watchdog group. But it ought not to be a controversy that a group like Judicial Watch is involved. And I was just thinking about this, not even before the debate, but it occurred to me afterwards in thinking about how it went. The left is angry, right? They're angry I was there and Judicial Watch was there. You know why? Because it smashed the media monopoly on these debates. You had an independent voice come in and ask direct questions about issues that voters care about. The unbridled corruption and abuse by the Justice Department and abusing Trump while protecting Joe and Hillary, et cetera. And the election integrity crisis that, people don't think the last election was legitimate. Certainly Republicans don't. And they're concerned about the 2024 election. The media doesn't want to talk about any of that. And this is why you need independent voices like Judicial Watch. And if during the general primaries, they need to have more people like me asking questions.
And let me just add to this that Democrats, when they lose elections, don't think elections are legitimate. So anyone who's governing the country, who has the responsibility for handling these big systems, should be wanting to instill confidence in those systems for everyone, not just Republican voters, of course.
Yeah, and you can be sure the rhetoric coming up to the 2024 election, especially Trump is the nominee, the left will start talking about how Trump can steal the election as they did in 2020.
Yeah.
So this is you can bet they will revert to form.
Exactly. Yeah. The Postal Service is going to steal the election for Trump. Is so crazy.
Oh, yes.
An amazing saga. All right, let's play some. Let me play your questions last night. Your first question. I want to ask you how this was done because they played your question, a pre-recorded question, and then they threw it to Chris Christie first. So here's Megyn Kelly introducing Tom Fitton last night.
We've got to move on to this. Now, by arrangement with the Republican National Committee, we've got two questions for you about the Justice Department and our election system. Here's Tom Fitton with Judicial Watch. Governor Christie, this one's for you.
President Trump and many of his supporters claim federal law enforcement agencies have abused his civil rights for the last 8 years by, among other things, spying on him and now prosecuting him while having treated Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden with kid gloves. A recent Gallup poll shows that Americans think more highly of the U.S. Postal Service than they do the FBI or Justice Department. What would you do as president to restore the faith of the American people in these agencies?
Well, first off, I'm the only person on this stage who's actually done a job in the Department of Justice. I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey.
And so he goes on and on, basically says, I'd make sure there would be no political considerations. We go after actual crimes. But did you know ahead of time that this question was going to be posed to Chris Christie?
I didn't. And I don't know if the intent was to limit the answer to only Chris Christie. So that was curious. And, his answer was a little bit different than I expected given his early rhetoric. And he didn't really challenge the concerns that I expressed about the targeting of Trump, the abuse of his civil rights, and, the crisis that's resulted from the rule of law.
No, in fact, he dignified all of the prosecutions of Trump. He spent the whole debate, other than this answer, he spent the whole debate saying that Trump is paying the consequences of his own actions, and we should not have him as our president, and that's ridiculous.
And I don't want to toot. Well, I will toot Judicial Watch's horn. It frankly shows the value of having an independent voice there. I'm not a media person in the traditional sense. I'm the head of a watchdog group, and he took the question seriously. And he didn't do the usual, response he had. And that to me is, kind of shows again the value that when you have people there that represent the grassroots, these candidates are going to pay attention.
Yeah, well, I'm glad. Like I said, I'm glad that question was put to him. But to your prior point, I wish the whole stage had an opportunity to answer it, because it is one of the most important issues in front of us, and it's not just about the harassment of Trump and going easy on these Democrats. It's by extension, and certainly in practice right now, about the assault on people because of their sincerely held political views all across our country by the Justice Department. And Trump is really, in many ways, just the most high-profile example of that.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because we were talking, your audience should know, I was talking with Vince a little bit before we began the conversation here. And, the question is, what is the editorial process here? And, I initially wanted to ask two questions, right? And they got back to me and said, look, we don't object to either one, but if you ask two, they won't answer either and go off on tangents. So the second question I would have asked is, should we defund the prosecutions of Trump? And I still want to know the answer to that.
Yes.
From them.
Yeah, I'd love to know the answer to that question. But can I ask, when you say you had an editorial process, who was the person that had the say on this, or who was the editor? Was it News Nation, their network? Was it the RNC? Who was in charge here?
Well, I drafted the initial questions with my colleagues at Judicial Watch, and the RNC invited Judicial Watch to participate, but didn't direct our questions at all. And I submitted them to our friends at News Nation, and they looked at them and made some editorial suggestions and changes, and which I agreed with.
Okay.
So it was a collaborative process, and it worked out well in the end, because the point I made in the initial questions was made in the edited questions, which were more edited for brevity and punchiness and to ensure that we get good answers to the questions, which is what our goal is.
Cool. All right. Let me move to the next one here. This one.
Since you're an editor, you know how important editors are to this process.
Yeah, they don't always improve things, but when they do, you cherish that editor, no question.
Right.
Let me go to the next question that you asked last night with excellent editing involved, and it involved our election system. Here is Tom Fitton last night.
Many Republicans are concerned about the legitimacy of elections. A federal judge just ruled that Pennsylvania must count undated mail-in ballots, and unlike Alabama, many states still don't require any identification to vote. What should states do now to increase election integrity and voter confidence for the 2024 election?
Well, Tom, thanks for the question. Thanks for what you guys do at Judicial Watch. It's really, really important. There's a lot of corruption in this government. You guys are doing a great job. What you should do for election integrity is do what we did in Florida.
I knew he would say that, by the way, but I'm glad he got the question. And I'm glad you asked it, especially with the detail that you included, Tom, about what these states are actually up to and why people don't have confidence in their elections. This is another obvious piece where the corporate press, the left-wing press, they don't mention what is happening in states like Pennsylvania, and yet you do. That was excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's important because it's front and center. This issue becomes irrelevant after the election, right? So I didn't want to ask a question about what they were going to do as president. I wanted to know what their position was going to be as candidates who have obviously a direct interest in the outcome and the management of elections, the administration of the elections. 15 or so states, I don't know the exact number, don't have any voter ID at all. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking tiny little states like Delaware. I'm talking California, Pennsylvania, New York, etc. And how does that increase confidence in election outcomes? And Alabama's got strict ID laws. There are ID laws in, I think, 30 plus states, but surely not enough. And given what happened in 2020 and the controversies in the administration of the election that led to a loss of confidence in the outcome, I think the numbers and prepping for the debate, 70% of Republicans think that the election was stolen. Numbers around there. And that's got to be addressed. And how is it going to be addressed by these candidates?
Yeah, that's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And this is, the idea, voter ID is overwhelming support among every demographic in the country. There's not a demographic that doesn't support voter ID. They all do.
That's in the 80% range.
Yeah.
Support for voter ID.
And if you are a government official or an elections official who does not support voter ID, it's because you want to cheat or you believe that cheating is helping you. That's the only explanation. And yet, so across the country, we have all these problems. These can be addressed and resolved. Jimmy Carter was a part of an entire election commission in the early 2000s that concluded that we need paper ballots and we need voter ID. And yet Democrats to this day refuse to sign on to that program and they insist that actually black voters would be suppressed by it. It's just not true. Look at what happened in Georgia. They added a voter ID requirement to even the mail-in ballots and black turnout increased. It's a scam, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, election integrity increases voter confidence and turnout. And, if I were running for president, certainly if I were running as a Republican, I would at least be trying to say to people whose vote I'm asking for, I understand how you feel about the 2020 election. I share your concerns, and this is what we're going to do to ensure it doesn't happen again, like in 11 months. Right. And I think there's urgency there, and hopefully, questions like this begin a different type of conversation about these issues as opposed to some of the sidebar issues that arise in debates.
Well, all of these candidates have an obligation to talk about this issue, and that includes the frontrunner, Donald Trump, in my view. Donald Trump should be talking about it in the way that you're talking about it right now. Here's what we can do to make sure this election is on the up and up and that people can have faith in it, correct?
Yeah, and that's a challenge because I don't necessarily have a clean answer as to how it can be done, right? Maybe some things can be done, maybe some big things can't be done. And we're just going to have to grapple with the lack of confidence and suppression as resulting from that lack of confidence in voter turnout. To me, it's a major issue, and this is why Judicial Watch, I can tell you, and because we're going to release it today, if it hasn't been already released, even as I speak, we're pressing states, including Illinois and California, and here in the District of Columbia, to clean up their voter rolls. And we know here in the District of Columbia, after we made some inquiries, they removed tens of thousands of people from the rolls just in the last few months, only because we said, what's going on there? So there are all sorts of things that can be done, and it's got to be a priority. And I asked about what I think are two big priorities. We can't let the Biden administration jail their political opponents without consequence. A republic depends on stopping that in many ways, I think. And our elections need to be saved in terms of their integrity. Are there other important issues? Yeah, our border, we're facing an invasion. We're killing our unborn children. We're mutilating children through transgender extremism. We have this race-based hatred and Marxism permeating our society. Those are the core issues, in my view, that are out there, in addition to being a banana republic through spending like the worst of the third world.
Yeah, I know. It's and every update we get on the banana republic justice system we have is more horrifying than the last. I mean, I saw earlier this week, Jack Smith's indictment against Trump is basically a screechy MSNBC segment. I mean, he's going after Donald Trump's every word and what he meant and how he was trying to steal the election, and it's crazy. It is just the craziest thing.
He wants to jail him for criticizing the Biden Justice Department. He called the January 6 prisoners political prisoners, and that's evidence that he should be jailed.
It's amazing. Justice Department abuses power, gets called out for it, and now that's the basis of committing a crime. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's evidence of a crime.
Tom Fitton, thank you as always, sir, for all of your excellent work. Ron DeSantis was right to thank you on the big stage last night, and we're grateful you're here today. Thank you, Tom.
Hey, thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, the website Axios has a report up today claiming that a number of Trump loyalists, this is the phrase they use throughout the piece, are set to join his cabinet In other words, people who will not betray him, which is what you might want if you were the president of the United States. The headline is Behind the Curtain Exclusive, How Trump Would Build His Loyalty First Cabinet. Kind of interesting for a number of reasons. Big headline-grabbing claims in this. They say that Trump is set to fill the most powerful jobs in government with men like Stephen Miller, who is a very competent conservative attorney. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, the guy who actually believes in the Trump agenda and America first and taking care of the American people, and Kash Patel, who has been wronged by the intelligence community, been targeted by the United States, and really believes in this country as well. So these are the people they're talking about. They say there's also the possible return of Steve Bannon as well, a very competent guy who would help keep the trains running, one would presume, if he were to join a Trump administration. So you're looking at all of this and wondering, okay, what's the big deal? They keep saying these guys are loyal, and that's a big issue. But like, if you're gonna, go after politicians for having quote loyalists around them, why wouldn't you go after Biden and the Obama-Biden universe? There's like a million of these people who are diehard loyalists to the left, who are a part of the Biden administration or who have been. What do you call Ron Klain, if not a loyalist, or somebody like Jen Psaki, the loyalist, right? Or Anita Dunn, or any of these other characters. Loyalists. People who will say literally anything to defend some of the worst possible things that are going on in our country right now, because fundamentally they're just defending their agenda. It's crazy. So here you have Axios insisting that a bunch of loyalists could get jobs. But the one who jumps out to me the most, which is kind of funny, is that they claim that Melania Trump is a huge advocate for picking Tucker Carlson to be the vice president of the United States. Axios says that Carlson would make a powerful onstage extension of her husband, in Melania's thinking. The former First Lady has made few campaign appearances this time around, but a Trump-Carlson ticket might encourage her to hit the trail. It's pretty funny. I have no idea if Melania Trump prefers Tucker for vice president of the United States. And from where I'm sitting, as somebody who knows Tucker well, I'd be kind of shocked, actually, if that was the arrangement. But I will say my favorite part of this story is that the supermodel is very on board with having Tucker Carlson be the vice president of the United States. This is a new life goal unlocked. I want the supermodels to love me. That Vince, the big hit with supermodels. Here to join us on this subject and so much more, Congressman Pat Fallon is here. He represents Texas's 4th Congressional District. He's also a member of the House Oversight Committee, the all-important Oversight Committee. Congressman, great to have you back with us, sir.
Man, thank you. Listen, at the end of the day, Joe Biden has been lying for so long, for 50 years, he doesn't know the difference between the truth and a lie. The fact that he can sit there and try to sell that he didn't talk to or meet with any of his son's business associates is absurd, because we have photographs, Joe, of you giving tours of the White House to Miguel Magnotti and Miguel Velasco, who were two of your son's Mexican business associates. You had dinner with Vadim Pazarska from Burisma after he gave your son $3.5 million. And how about Yelena Benarina? She gave him nearly $3.5 million, and you had dinner with her too after she gave your son money. And then Kenez Rezhikev from Kazakhstan wrote your son a check for $142,300. Your son bought a Porsche the next day for $142,300. A couple months later, you had lunch or dinner rather with him as well. You've played golf with these people. You've given them tours. You had a Chinese business associate of your son where you actually wrote his daughter a letter of recommendation for college. So that's the truth. I don't know what Joe Biden's thinking. Maybe his brain's so much he doesn't know that we know all those other things already.
Well, you're right about this is his long career. His senility can't be the excuse here, because he's had a long career of lying. We are like 5 minutes away from him claiming that he doesn't know who Hunter Biden is, aren't we?
Well, that may be the plan. That might have been the plan all along, is just push past the November election and then claim that you just don't remember anymore. I can't tell you. I don't know, because it's absolutely absurd.
But a lie this brazen should be eye-opening to anybody who's been watching this saga with an open mind, because For instance, we saw that text message that it was a WhatsApp message from Hunter Biden threatening a Chinese business associate, where he says that he and his father are going to impose consequences on him, and he's sitting there with his father. He says during all of this. Now, Biden has denied that was a legitimate threat and that he was even there. But based on the way he lies so casually, I'm kind of inclined to believe Biden was there.
Yes, you know what? This is the thing. They can prove it. If they're telling the truth, you can prove it. They choose not to. They could voluntarily give up their geolocations from their phones, from their smartphones, to prove they weren't there at that day, at that time. But they don't do that. Now, why is that? Because they were probably sitting in the room, almost deafening. You know, and also Biden first started out, Vince, and he said, I don't know anything about what my son does. And then when that was proven false, he said on the campaign trail, well, I've never met with any of his business associates. And then, of course, the pictures and the dinners and the tours. And so he said, well, I didn't benefit from it. And now we've got direct benefits of $200,000, $40,000, and then these monthly payments from his son. So far, we'll find more, I'm sure. And they said, well, those were loans. Okay, if those were loans, Joe, then show us the check where you gave your brother $200,000. They haven't done that. Why wouldn't you? If you really just loan somebody money, you could punch us in the face so hard by saying, see, I did loan it. It was just a loan between brothers. And the $40,000, they don't and can't do that because it never happened. Right. The money only flowed one way. It flowed into Joe's pockets. It never flowed out of Joe's pockets.
Yeah, and there's no promissory notes, no documents whatsoever to support any claim like this. Otherwise, they would have produced it a long time ago. But nothing at all. So lastly, on this subject for now, Congressman Fallon, I know that Congress is seeking, your committee is seeking testimony from Hunter Biden. He's supposed to appear next week on the 13th. And Hunter Biden's lawyers indicated this week that they're not appearing unless it's in a form of their own choosing. Only if we appear under certain conditions, it has to be public, it has to be this. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you receive a subpoena from Congress, you don't get to set the own terms of your appearance, do you?
Correct. And you know what? I thought it was equal protection under the law, Vince, that was one of the pillars of our society. But if your last name is Biden, you get to dictate to the United States Congress how you're going to appear. No, this is about process. And the Democrats, and particularly Jamie Raskin from Orange, is hypocritical when he criticizes the Republicans and he says, "Oh, you've been pining for a month to have Hunter Biden on, and now he's willing to testify. You're going to come into the committee here, and you won't give him his public day in court or public day in committee." Yeah, we will. But the process begins with a deposition behind closed doors, just like when Jamie Raskin wanted to depose President Trump and his allies. He wanted to do it behind closed doors first, and then possibly have a public hearing. So if Democrats didn't have double standards, Vince, they would have no standards at all.
Yeah, as our friend Chris Plant has coined, it's an excellent point. It's just remarkable, and so here you have a standoff. And normally, what would happen here if it would be that somebody fails to appear, and even though they're required to by the subpoena, they get a contempt of Congress referral to the Justice Department. But now we've got Merrick Garland in charge of the Justice Department. What's going to happen here, Congressman Fallon?
Yeah, don't hold your breath, Vince. You might turn blue. But the whole point is we can do what we can do, and we got to force their hand. Because when the legacy media turns on them, then they usually may act. Or when public opinion turns on them so badly, then they go, okay, we'll act. So I don't know what Garland's going to do. I would imagine for sure he's going to drag his feet and hope that he doesn't have to act decisively and actually do his job and administer justice. He administers what he sees as justice. Or it's more like punishment for those that disagree with him politically. But for those that agree with him politically, boy, they can get away with a lot, can't they? Yeah. And we've got to continue to expose it.
Yep, it's injustice for sure. Okay, let's move to the issue of the border now. We've got a lot of people still pouring across our border. We have a full-blown invasion going on. Bill Maloogian tweeting this week that there were more than 12,000 migrant encounters at the border in one day. It's the highest single-day total ever recorded. This includes 10,200 plus Border Patrol apprehensions of illegal immigrants, amongst the highest daily totals for the Border Patrol ever recorded. So the numbers continue to be completely out of control, Congressman. In Washington now, there is some debate about whether or not we are going to fix the border. What can you tell us?
It has never been worse than it is right now. We know that, as you just pointed out, the worst day in our history. We hadn't ever had a month of over 200,000 illegal border crossings until Joe Biden took office. And now we've had 17 of them. 17 months. We actually saw a $300,000 month in August, 304,000 illegal crossings. And I could go on and on. The terrorists, and let's just compare one thing real quick to give it context. Chinese nationals, a couple years ago, there were 323 Chinese nationals across our southern border illegally. Last year, 24,048. That's 74 times more. And that's not alarming to this administration. It's alarming to me. I think it's alarming to you. The terrorist watch list. We had in the first 34 months of the Trump administration, 11 people that were on the terrorist watch list, which is bad enough. And now, under Joe Biden, it was over 200 in that same period of time. So it's wide open. And if we don't address it, a Gaza-style attack is not a question of if, it is a matter of when. And we cannot sit idly by. We should be proactive and not reactive.
You know, yesterday the White House insisted, this is kind of an amazing, again, brazen talking point coming out of the White House right now. They're insisting that Joe Biden is, quote, all about border security. That's what John Kirby claimed yesterday. And I know I laughed out loud when I heard this yesterday. The other thing that they are claiming is that it's Republicans who are holding up any effort to get control of the border now. This is the effort. This is what they're saying at the White House. What do you make of this?
It's just, it's absurdity. It's so ludicrous. It's hard to even comment on it because nobody's buying what they're selling. They're not buying what he's selling about. I didn't know what my son was doing, and I never benefited from it. And they're sure as heck not buying the fact that they are trying to secure the southern border. If that's true, if you're all about border security, riddle me this. In the first 34 months of the Obama administration, there were 1.5 million illegal encounters, a little below that. And Trump administration was 1.6 million, so very comparable. Under Joe Biden, it's been 8 million. So you want to tell me that you're all about border security? How can you say that with a straight face? You can't. You're just, again, lying to suit your own purposes for you in the hopes, in the vain hopes of you winning another election come next November.
Can you give us an update on the congressional fight here? I saw some reports. I know you're not in the Senate, but there was a Senate briefing earlier this week that apparently descended into some chaos because Republicans and Mitch McConnell, to his credit, wanted to talk about border security. Meanwhile, the Democrats only wanted to talk about sending another $60 billion to one of the most corrupt countries on the planet, Ukraine. And are we going to see a legitimate border security package of any kind, or is this just all, a Trojan horse where they talk about border security, but the only thing they pass is more amnesty for more illegals?
No, that's what their goal is. They want to call it more. They want to call it robust. Anytime a liberal uses the word robust, run. Okay, because they're gonna pick your pockets and your friends' pockets. So what we're trying to do, right? I applaud the Senate Republicans because they're getting this one right. We do not want to shut down the government. Having said that, we are not going to get rolled over this time. It's not going to happen. I ran for Congress and I'm serving in Congress because I was so sick of the Republicans getting, steamrolled by the liberals. So the speaker, I met with him yesterday privately, a few of us, and he assured us we are getting real border security or there's no deal. And they're trying to ignore this. So typical in their typical fashion, what the Biden administration does is if they don't get what they want, they just pick up their toys and go home. And then it'll be that week, right before government shutdown, that they're going to be scrambling because we're not passing anything unless we get border security. That's our stance. And we are united. The Republicans in the House are united on that. And so far, so are the Republicans in the Senate.
So what does that look like in practice? I mean, because I don't see the Biden administration telling the Border Patrol to blockade people from coming across. So are there things that can be changed about the law that would help that don't require the Biden administration's enforcement mechanisms? Because they're refusing to enforce current law when it comes to the border.
Well, they are. They absolutely are. So, it would be written into this deal where, you have to get reinstate migrant protection protocols, like the Wait Mexico policy, for instance. we need, how about visa, overstaying your visa? There should be peace in that. If you overstay, you don't get a slap on the wrist. You get deported and you can't come back in the country for 5 years. That was what my bill did. You can't come back for 5 years, can't apply for asylum for 10, you can't get a green card for 15. Real peace in this, because President Trump's policies work. It was a trickle. Now it's a flood again, and we cannot have that moving forward.
No. How about nationwide e-verify? How about we actually verify that U.S. citizens are who we're employing, or people who have the right to be here legally?
That's in H.R. 2, which is a bill that passed out of the House and, of course, died in the Senate. And that's what we are demanding right now, is we want H.R. 2 to pass into law, and then we can talk about their priorities. Because it is about compromise. We do not have the Senate. We do not have the White House. But to be accused of we're hostage takers when we're trying to compromise, I thought that's what the liberals champion.
Yeah.
Compromise. But now they've been so used to getting everything they want, compromise is hostage taking now. I didn't know that, Vince. I was unawares.
Well, everything's a lie now, it turns out. Congressman Pat Fallon, thank you very much. Always good to talk to you, and have a great day, sir.
Thanks, Vince. Take care.
All right. Be well. It's funny to hear Democrats get all worked up about where did all this anti-Semitism come from on these college campuses? We got to deal with this. When in reality, it was the left, as we were talking about with Emily Jasinski earlier, who really created this environment, obviously. Elizabeth Warren was on CNBC today and was confronted with this inconvenient truth. Take a listen.
Learned in colleges, Senator, that allowed them to think that if it's leveled at Jewish people, it's okay. The same people that were marching with Black Lives Matter are now the ones, or some of them, that would, go to the mat and be out every day marching for that, are some of the people now saying genocide to the Jews. How did that happen on liberal college campuses?
Calling for genocide is wrong. Leaders should make that.
You keep saying that. I understand that, but it came from somewhere. You don't think the progressive left has any culpability in driving us to this point right now, Senator?
I think that what has happened is that people feel the pain of the Middle East, and they feel it on both sides very personally.
Oh, come on. What a scam. Look, Elizabeth Warren 100% knows the answer to this question. And she also knows she's not Native American, and she's lying on all of these subjects. Yes, of course it was the, quote, progressive left. There's nothing progressive about them. They're entirely regressive. They have driven us into a world where people judge each other on the basis of their race, where you have these college campuses where that's happening at scale. This is the product of what Elizabeth Warren and her ilk have created. A world where everybody thinks that their race is their destiny, to the point that she pretended to be Native American to get ahead. The whole thing is crazy. The whole thing is crazy. We need some sanity. And lucky for you, the great one, Mark Levin, is up next right here on WMAL.